Each morning we would wake up and wonder what they could do to us today they didn't do to us yesterday.
Okay. Today is May 17th, 2016. We are interviewing for the Veterans History Project at Triad Bank in St. Louis, Missouri. Present are Don Siegel, videographer, Audrey Mack, logger, and my name is Jane Seedoff, and I'm the interviewer. And today we are interviewing Ellis Frohman. And where we start? Why don't we start with where you were born?
Okay. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut.
And did you live there most of your life?
Lived in New Haven until I went to college. I went to college at the University of Connecticut, where it was a land-grant school, so we had to take ROTC. And the first 2 years, and then you can apply to take the second 2 years, which I did, and I was accepted and then commissioned on graduation.
Okay. Tell us about your father.
My father was an accountant. He actually was an IRS agent, and he was a World War II vet, along with all of my uncles. And so that sort of pushed me toward the military. When I was a kid, most kids played Cowboys and Indians, we played Army. And so we had some old Army equipment, and but my father believed that you had to give back to your country. And so he pushed me, and I knew that at some point in my life I was going to go into the service, and ROTC gave me that avenue.
Did your father talk about the World War II?
Not much. I mean, some things. Most of it was anecdotal stuff. He didn't say much about it. I had one uncle who was an officer in Patton's army, and actually went into France on D-Day, and so he was sort of a hero.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. Is your father drafted?
Yes.
And he served for?
3.5 years, I guess.
3.5 years. Was he out of the country?
No.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your mom.
She was a homemaker. Born and brought up in Connecticut, and she just followed whatever my father wanted.
Okay. Did you have to move around for the military?
In the military, we moved quite a bit. We moved. Well, with him, I did not move. That's what you meant.
Him. I know.
No.
I'm talking to you about
he left. I was probably about one year old, I guess, when he got drafted.
And he did not see you that
time. No, I do recall going down to Atlanta. He was at Fort McPherson in Atlanta, and I do recall taking a train down there for a visit. But I was probably 3 years old then.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have one sister.
And
who's
older, younger?
She's 5 years younger than I am.
She's 5 years younger. And where does she live?
Right now, she lives in Maui, Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Do you stay in contact with her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so were you close? Did you play together growing up?
For the most part, but it's, big brother and little sister. And
Yeah. What did you do as fun as a child? You played war, that one thing.
And I did a lot with stamps and stamp collecting. I was involved with model railroading, and that gave way to chemistry labs and that kind of stuff. So it pushed me toward a career in the sciences.
Is there any memorable part of your childhood that you'd like to talk about that stands out for you?
I think it was relatively average. I don't think there was anything that we did that was unusual. When I was about 10 years old, we moved to the suburbs from the inner city, and we lived on the beach. The house was on the beach.
Oh my gosh, how delightful for you. How very delightful for you. So you spent a lot of time at the beach, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah. Tell me about school, starting grade school. What do you remember?
Grade school, in those days we didn't have a middle school. We went from kindergarten through 8th grade in the same school, walked to school, and walked home for lunch and walked back to school. And then I went to a regional high school and took the city bus to school. It was relatively uneventful.
Did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I think so. I did well in school.
You did. You're a good student.
Yeah.
And so after you graduated from high school, did you have any jobs when you were in school at all?
Yes, I worked in a coat factory, women's coat factory, for I guess 2 summers. First summer I was in the packing room, and the second summer they thought that I was smart enough to work as a cutter's assistant. So I cut patterns.
Fabric? Oh my gosh. Okay. And did you have around the house when your dad was gone for a period of time? Did you notice any responsibilities? You were young, very young, but falling to you that you're.
Well, we lived in a very old kind of living environment. You know, my father was a patriarchal society. And by the time I was 13 years old, I had full responsibilities for a number of things. And I was included as part of the family in terms of making family decisions or whatever.
You were. Give us an example.
Well, if they were going to make a major purchase, I mean, we didn't have much at all. But if they were going to make a major purchase, I was in on that decision.
You were.
Yeah.
Give an example of like a car, you mean?
A car or a refrigerator or, furniture in the house or any kind of thing. Whether we were going to go on a trip, where we would go.
So they expected you to be responsible as a child, but they also gave you responsibility like an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firstborn son, and therefore I had a different status than many of my cousins. I had a number of male cousins, but many of them were not firstborn, so they had a different status in the family and hierarchy.
Did you feel privileged with that?
In those days, I don't think so. Actually, I felt put on, but
Okay.
today's a little different. Yeah,
I can do that too. So you talked about the science, and was that your favorite subject growing up?
Yeah, I went to when I graduated from high school. I was going to go into chemical engineering, and after first year in engineering, I decided engineering was not for me, but the biosciences were for me. So I went into chemistry and my biochemistry, and I graduated with a degree in zoology and chemistry.
Okay. Can you tell me where, you were too little, but when you moved to the suburbs, was that a hard adjustment at all? Or
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah, it was very different.
leaving friends.
It more than friends, it was leaving family. I mean, and it was actually not that far. It was only about 7 miles down the road. But in those days, 7 miles was forever.
Because you walked a lot of places or rode your bike.
Right.
So that was the difficulty, is leaving your family that was close by in the city.
Yeah, that the way we celebrated the holidays, the Jewish holidays, those kind of things had to change.
Okay.
And so it was a learning experience.
Right.
And I went from going to a Hebrew school to going to a public school, which was a big change.
Big adjustment. That's a big adjustment.
If you're still watching, it means this story matters to you. And stories like this aren't really told anymore, but they're part of history. If you want to support and see more of them, subscribe. It helps keep these stories alive. And if you truly want to go deeper, there's a link below to join our Patreon community, where we preserve these stories together. Now, let's get back to the story.
Yeah. Would your family come out and visit you much, though, since you were right?
Oh yeah, they always came out because we're at the beach.
Yes, yes. Were there other Jewish students at the school?
Yeah.
There were, so you felt.
Yeah, about 40% of the students in the school were from Jewish.
Okay. How much did religion play a part in your life?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us, you had a bar mitzvah?
Oh, of course, yeah. It was something that that's how we lived. We lived from one day, from through the week. Saturday was the Sabbath. We did what we did very little on that day. Went to the synagogue, and then, so it was from week to week, and around the calendar. We lived more on the Jewish calendar than we did on the solar calendar.
Were you Orthodox? Was formed?
We were Orthodox.
You were Orthodox. Okay. Do you practice that now?
Yeah, I consider myself modern Orthodox now.
Okay.
I belong to an Orthodox synagogue here in St. Louis.
Okay. Where's
Traditional congregation in Creve Coeur.
Okay. So you graduated from high school. You did well. You liked school. Did you play any sports in school?
No.
You were a student.
I was a student.
Okay. And your hobbies as a teenager and in senior high school?
I was involved in quite a bit in high school. I was on this yearbook committee. I was on a variety of clubs, language clubs, and those kind of things. That kept us busy.
Yeah, it sounds like you were very active in high school. So then you go to college. And how far away was college from home?
That's about 65 miles, I guess.
Close.
Yeah.
So did you live on the campus or did you,
Oh, I know. We lived on campus.
what was that like? What was
It was
dorm like?
on campus was when in those days it was Storrs, Connecticut. There was only one road in and one road out, and one bus a week. So when you got there, you stayed there.
Wow. Wow. What did you say? It was a land,
It's a land grant school.
and that meant that
It's a state university. In those days, the federal government required every male student to take ROTC in the first 2 years. And then you can decide whether you want to continue. And of course, the government has to decide whether they want to keep you continuing. But I was fortunate enough to get a commission out of that.
And what year did you graduate from college?
64.
64. Okay. So there wasn't much going on the campus in terms of what.
It was starting. It was
was
starting. There were demonstrations and that kind of stuff against the Vietnam War.
There was.
Yeah.
Did they any of them get out of hand?
Yeah, they did.
They did.
Actually, on graduation day, when we were all marching to our commissioning ceremony, it got a little warm.
Wow. Wow. That must have been uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And when you left college, then you were in the military.
Well, I graduated and went home, and we had to wait. I was assigned to the 13th Corps, which was here in Chicago, and I was a reserve officer, and so I had to wait for my orders to go to active duty, and I had a 2-year assignment for active duty. So went home. They told us it would be anywhere from 4 to 6 months before our orders arrived. And about 4 months in, my fiance and I decided to get married, and so she could come with me. And then while we're on our honeymoon, my orders arrived.
Oh, what timing. So tell me a little bit about your wife now, but your fiance, where did you meet her?
I met her at school.
At college?
Yeah.
And her name is?
And
Anne. And did you date for a very long time or?
no, not very long. First date was in January of 64, and we got married in November 64.
Yeah, well, you must have known. It must have clicked.
I guess so.
So you got married, and then when you got the orders, you and your wife went to?
We went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas for the officer basic course, and then from there on to Fort Huachuca for my first assignment.
So Fort Sam Houston, how long were you there?
I think about 10 weeks.
10 weeks. And what were they doing, training you?
That was being trained to be an officer, how to act as an officer in the Army.
Okay. It didn't have anything to do with the science part of your
Oh, no.
responsibility.
After my first assignment, it had nothing to do with that. I was assigned to an administrative job.
Okay. What was it like, in this training thing of learning how to be an officer? What was
It was interesting. I mean, ROTC, they did some of that.
Yeah.
But here we were steeped in day in and day out. And it was sort of like a basic training for officers. I had already been to basic training.
Okay.
And as far as combat training, and that was between my junior and senior year in college.
Okay.
And then this was, now you're an officer, this is how you react versus being enlisted. So it was a little different,
Yeah.
but there still was a lot of physical activity and weapons training and that kind of stuff.
So go back to basic training. Where was that?
Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
Fort Devens, Massachusetts. How long did that last?
That was 8 weeks.
8 weeks. And this was military training. So they were
Right, this is required, ROTC required thing. So we learned how to be combat infantry.
What was that experience like?
That was my first experience in firing a gun, doing a lot of things that I had never done before. Yeah, so it was hard, and actually my mother didn't recognize me when I came home.
You lost a lot of weight.
Lost a lot of weight, and I was I was in pretty good shape in those days.
When you say it was hard, was it they were just so
Each morning we would wake up and wonder what they could do to us today. They didn't do to us yesterday.
Okay, give us an example of a hard day there.
You wake up around 4 o'clock in the morning. You have your bunk in order, and the whole barracks has to be in order. That by 6 o'clock you were having breakfast. Had about a half an hour for breakfast, and then you went on. Could be a 10-mile run or a 20-mile march, or who knows what, with field gear, without field gear, who knows. It was a long time ago, but
Yeah, field gear could weigh up to how many
about
pounds?
60 pounds.
60 pounds. Wow. No wonder you lost a lot of weight. Did you make some good friends in your training?
Some, yeah. I met a few people. You know, they came from all over the country, so it was. I met people from places I'd never been.
Have you kept in touch with any of those friends?
Over the years, a few. It's sort of waned off after all these years.
Right. Okay, and so then you went to officer training,
At Fort Sam Houston, Texas.
and then after that you went to...
To Fort Huachuca, Arizona.
Okay.
And there I was assigned as the adjutant of the hospital, the station hospital there.
Okay. What does that mean?
Adjutant is like an office manager for the headquarters.
Okay.
And so I had a number of clerks. Now, we didn't have computers in those days, and we didn't. You know, everything was done on paper, and everything was done with a typewriter, which I can't type. But I had a room full of secretaries and a sergeant major who worked for me, and we ran the office in the headquarters, and we did what was required there. I guess they gave me about 27 jobs. A new guy on campus gets all the additional duties, so I had about 27 different titles.
Wow. Is that the first time you've been in a position of having people work for you?
Oh yeah.
So you had to...
So again, I had to learn a lot.
I
And
bet.
the sergeant major was good. He was a very nice guy, and he took me under his wing and taught me the ropes.
Okay. And what was your title at that time? What rank were you?
I was a second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant. Okay. And so in Arizona, you were there for...
I was there. That was supposed to be my only assignment. Should have left the service, but about 18 months in, the sergeant major knew I wasn't happy with the job. I hated the job, actually. He came across a brochure about a fellowship in clinical laboratory science, and he handed it to me, and he said, "Are you interested in this?" And I called my wife, and I said, "This means we're going to have to stay in the service for another 3 years if I take this." And she said, "Let's do it." And so I put in my application, and the sergeant major, those days they had a lot of power. He made some phone calls, and I was in.
Really? And so they moved you.
And as they moved me, I went to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington.
Now that must have been an interesting place to work.
That was a very interesting place.
Tell me about some of the experiences you had.
Walter Reed, I was a student, and we rotated through all the laboratories. But I had to pull officer of the day periodically, and so you became, in the middle of the night, you had to go out and inspect the place and check the guard and all that kind of stuff. And it was a very interesting thing. It got me really interested in laboratory medicine, and particularly in transfusion medicine was the area that I cared about most.
Yeah. That's wonderful that that opportunity came along. Yeah. I understand why you say your sergeant major was quite something. So you lived in Washington?
We lived in Sulphur Spring, Maryland.
Okay.
I had a small apartment there, and it was only maybe a half a mile from the hospital, so I was able to walk to the hospital. And
Nice.
didn't have to fight the traffic,
Right.
which was bad then, but it's worse now.
That is so true. And so what was your wife doing at that time?
My wife, fortunately, she did not have to have a job, so she did a lot of volunteer work. When we were at Fort Sam Houston while I was in training, she was in training. The Officers' Wives Club, the commanding general's wife would run this thing, and they took the wives aside and trained them to be Army wives. So she learned how to dress and how to do whatever wives are supposed to do in those days. It's very archaic compared to what this goes on today, but
Yeah, there's some young people would say.
oh yeah, when I told people about that, but she really bought into this stuff. She
did.
She liked it, and that's one of the things. You cannot make a career out of the military unless your family and particularly your spouse likes it.
That's what I would imagine.
And,
They have to like
she really
read
liked it.
and the responsibility to behave in a certain way.
Right.
And so it didn't bother her at all.
Not at all. I mean, she learned that in those days, for an officer's wife to go to the PX, she had to wear gloves and a dress.
Tell us more. Tell us more. This is very interesting. 'Cause I don't think I've heard a story about.
And we would get you get invited to someone's home for dinner. A senior officer would invite you, and you had to go in, and you had your calling cards, and she had to have her calling cards. Oh yeah, it was very formal.
Did she need to dress in a dress most of the time?
Yes. Yeah.
Not in any slacks or.
No, that was way out. That was a no-no.
Oh my God. And so when you were in Washington, that's when she did a lot of volunteer work.
She did. Yeah, she volunteered at the hospital and other places around the city.
Did she have then contact with other officers' wives?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
My class, it was small. It was six officers. We were all the same rank, and so we kept a small knit group together.
Because you didn't live in a base, so
Right.
you had to initiate contact with, and that's pretty much who you spent your time with.
Right.
Did you make friendships in the neighborhood?
She did. I was never home, so that's where I started I learned my career very well. And 12-hour days were average.
And she was very supportive, it sounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You married the right person, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I sure did.
Really did. 'Cause it does make a big difference. I've heard of experiences where it has not worked out.
Oh yeah. I knew a lot of guys who either got out or they had divorces or whatever because of the military just took too much from them.
So how long were you there?
1 year.
1 year. Very
It
brief.
was 1 year course, and then it made me eligible to take national boards, which I had to pass to get my MOS, my military occupational specialty, changed from an administrative officer to a laboratory officer. And then they assigned me to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Even though I had asked to go west of the Mississippi, they sent me to Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
You wanted to go through something totally new? When were you the best?
So I moved 30 miles down the road.
So how long were you there?
I was there probably 3.5 years. And that was a good assignment. I learned a lot. I had a lot of interesting things there. I had some good timing. Some of the stuff that my interest being in laboratory medicine and particularly in transfusion medicine, the discovery of an antibody for protecting women from RH disease, checking their babies from RH disease, was discovered while I was there, and we gave the first dose, I think, in the Army.
My gosh, how exciting.
And we had an unfortunate hepatitis epidemic, and I was able to make contact with the guy in Australia who was working on discovering the hepatitis B antibody. And we were able to send samples to him to help that research. So I got involved in some research while I was
You
there.
really did some really groundbreaking research. Huh. So you knew the people that, especially the one with the RH factor, you knew the person that was.
Oh yeah,
of that.
yeah. In the laboratory, you have to work closely with the physicians, and I knew these patients. I knew the diseases. It's a small hospital. In those days, it was a very small hospital. Today, it's a very large hospital.
Is it? Well, that sounds exciting. Very, very exciting. So you're there for 3 years.
3 years, and from there, I went overseas to Bangkok, Thailand.
Okay.
And I was supposed to command the 376 Mobile Laboratory, which was a regional laboratory. But when I got there, they changed the designation of the unit to a fixed site. Okay. So my laboratory was now in a building.
In Bangkok.
In Bangkok. And a few miles away was the 5th Field Hospital, and they assigned me also to be the laboratory officer of 5th Field Hospital.
How close were they?
About 2 miles apart.
2 miles apart. Now, where was your wife at this time when you went to
She came with me.
She got to come with you.
Right. There was an accompanied assignment. She, my newborn daughter, daughter was, I guess she was about 2 years old, maybe 2 years old at that time.
Did you live on a base or did you?
No, we had to get an apartment, which was an interesting.
Yeah, tell us about that. What was it like to live in Bangkok?
It
Because this was a while ago.
it was a while ago, but living in a foreign country, particularly that kind of a foreign country, where everything is different than it is in the United States, was a bit hair-raising at the time. I did have hair at that time.
Or I just think what a huge adjustment it would be, and for your wife, because did she get any assistance in anything, trying to figure out the ropes, or?
Not really. They gave us a little booklet. Some of the people, when an officer moves from one assignment to another, they assign somebody that's there as your sponsor. So they help you get your feet on the ground. And so we had somebody who took us around and showed us the apartments and where we could get an apartment. And we nailed down a nice apartment. They think that Americans live very big, so this was a huge place where we rented.
Oh my gosh, it sounds nice to have that kind of room.
And it was very nice because they think it's cold when it gets to 70 degrees. They put on heavy coats, but the average temperature there is in the 90s. It is hot.
So, right, when I think about where you were, what, Fort Sam Houston, so you weren't used to that kind of climate there.
No. Actually, when I went to Fort Sam Houston, it was the first time I'd been west of the Appalachians. And we left in January. It was snowing in New York when we left. And when I arrived in San Antonio, it was about 80 degrees. And we were in heavy winter clothes.
Oh my God. Oh gosh. Was it humid in that part of Texas? Was it? No.
Yeah, it's somewhat humid, but it's quite warm. It was, and then, you get used to it very quickly. And then we went to Arizona where it was very nice there. We lived up in the mountains and it was very nice.
You lived up in the mountains. That is nice. That is very, very nice. So what was the climate like in Bangkok?
Bangkok, there's only 3 seasons. There's the dry season where it's very hot, and then there's the hot season, which is even hotter. And then there's the wet season, the monsoon season, where it's very, very, very wet.
And humid.
And very humid, yeah. Well, Bangkok is actually, they call it the Venice of the East because it's built on canals. Oh. And the roads are all over canals. And you can actually get around, and I got around in water taxis and boats.
Really? That's interesting. That's and how did your wife feel about being?
Oh, she loved it. She really.
She's a trooper.
She took on to that. She liked Bangkok. That was a very good assignment for us.
What made it good for her? Wait.
She got around. She was able to do things and jewelry, bought jewelry. There was just all kinds of exotic things to see that we'd never seen before.
What were your hours like?
My hours in the hospital I averaged a 10 to 12 hour day, and I was on call all the time.
So she do a lot of stuff on her own then?
Oh yeah, and she learned a little bit of the language. We had a maid, and the maid spoke broken English, but enough that we could communicate, and she helped my wife communicate with the local people.
What a learning experience for her. That's neat. So you mentioned your firstborn child, your daughter.
Right.
What is her name?
Naomi.
Naomi. And when was she born?
She was born in 1968.
In 1968. And where?
At Fort Belvoir.
Okay. And so she went along.
She slept along.
She slept along. So your mom was busy adjusting to where she was.
When we went to Bangkok, my wife was 7 months pregnant.
Oh, she was. And she had a 2-year-old.
And right.
She had a 2-year-old. Okay, so
a
couple months after
my son was born in Thailand.
And his name is?
David.
So was he born in like 70 or 69?
He was born in 71.
71, okay.
Right? Yeah, 71.
71. Okay, and so she was very busy taking care of children.
Well, she and the maid. Don't forget the maid.
I mean, you have full-time maid?
Full time. They lived in.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
Yeah.
So you stayed there, and
I was there for 2 years, and part of my assignment was to go back and forth to Vietnam, where I worked with the laboratory at Long Binh. There was a major laboratory there.
where is that in the country?
Then Long Binh is about the center part of the southern of South Vietnam, was then South Vietnam. Just about 40 miles from Saigon. And so I went there, and I'd stay there for a month maybe, and then come home and for a few weeks, and then go back for another month or whatever. And the big thing there was we were working on the drug problem, and
When you say
particularly
the drug problem.
the heroin.
Okay.
And it was a problem in Thailand. You could buy drugs easily in Thailand, and very, very cheap. And so they developed a system in Vietnam of screening these guys before they went home. They had to be drug free in order to get on the plane to go home. And I brought that system back to Thailand and introduced it into the country of Thailand so that we could screen all the guys going home, recycling back to the States.
Huh. So you were actively involved in creating that program and screening people before they left Vietnam. How did you handle that situation? What did they do when you got somebody and they weren't drug free?
Oh, then they were sent to the 6th Convalescent Center in the Cam Bay, and they stayed there until they became drug free.
Oh, so they were at a treatment facility.
It was a treatment facility, more like a prison, but it was a treatment facility.
What makes you say it's more like a prison?
So they couldn't go where they wanted to go. They were there to stay.
They were confined,
Yeah.
which they had to be.
And the planes would come in to pick them up, would come right in, and they would go from the confinement area. They would be marched to the plane, put on the plane, and sent home.
Do you know if at that time when they got home there was any follow up with them?
Yeah, as far as I know, there were follow-ups, but it wasn't great. I mean, they assumed that many of these guys got caught because they had a little party before they left, what they call freedom parties. And they would smoke. They didn't shoot up heroin in those days. They were smoking it. They were dipping their cigarettes in a solution of heroin and then drawing the smoke through it. And so that they were not really addicts. Saw very few addicts. So it took a couple of days, and they would get out of their system, and then they sent them home.
And what would they get? Was it easy to get heroin?
Oh, yeah.
In Vietnam even?
Vietnam was easy. Thailand, you can go down the corner, and for $5 you can get enough heroin to kill a horse.
So you were stationed. Your wife was in Thailand, in Bangkok.
She was in
You
Bangkok.
made these trips to Vietnam, be over there. And was the point of what you were doing is to bring it back?
Right. My job was to not only bring the methods back, but also to take some of my people over there to Vietnam, where we screened them, because the screeners had to be free. Had to be sure that they were not drug addicts, and then bring them back.
Oh my gosh! So it was pretty. Was it pretty rampant to use in terms of military?
Yeah, military, the Army, certainly merchant marines. In Thailand, we had a lot of merchant marines that were bringing in supplies coming in through what's called the deep water port, Sadahip. It's about 100 kilometers from Bangkok. And those guys would come in on these huge ships, most of them bringing weapons. The B-52s were armed in Thailand, and then they fly over to Vietnam. And so these guys were bringing in the armament. Many of them were drug addicts, and I did and participated in many of autopsies on these guys who didn't realize how powerful the drugs are in Thailand compared to what they are in the States. States, they cut it 100 times. In Thailand, it was pure, and they would be dead before they hit the floor.
Oh my gosh, that's not something I've heard of. You have, and so the people that came over, they came over in a ship. They weren't flying.
Right.
Okay, so you saw a lot of those that they just.
Yeah.
How sad.
It is.
How very, very sad. to.
I learned a lot of forensic medicine that trip.
Oh, it sounded very interesting to me. I mean, it was an eye opener for sure, wasn't it?
It was. Oh yeah. For me, it was a big eye opener. It's something I'd never been exposed to before.
Was there any problems with marijuana use then that you encountered?
No, marijuana was rare. Anybody would use marijuana. They did hashish. That was easy to get. I recall once going to Rangoon, and when I got off the plane, we had what's called official passports. They were red color instead of the blue passports. And so when they saw the red passport, they would just take you right through. They didn't have to stop and go through customs. And as soon as you got to the end of the line, they tried to sell you hashish and heroin and a lot of things that you shouldn't want.
Right. But people were susceptible.
Yeah.
They were. So how long were you in this work situation?
I did that for about 18 months.
About 18 months. That just sounds very interesting. Experiences that most people don't ever get close to. So when you left there.
Well, it's sort of as my tour in Thailand was winding down, I came to the decision point to whether I stay in the service or not. And I was by that time a captain, and I was. They were asking me whether I wanted to stay, and I said that I was interested in going to a school in the blood bank technology for a year, and that was in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And a colonel happened to be coming through the country, and he was in charge of assigning medical service corps officers. And so he stopped and talked to me, and he said he would get me into the school, but I would have to go regular Army, get out of the reserves and take a commission in the regular Army. Okay. And so that meant I was a lifer. And my wife said, let's do it. What else we got to do?
Amazing. It's amazing. You had two children by then.
I had 2 kids by then. And so I came to Fort Knox, applied for the regular Army, got accepted, and went to school for a year. And from there, I was...
Your whole family was able to move with you?
Yeah, and we lived on post. And then when the school was over, I stayed at Fort Knox for another couple of years as the deputy commander of what was then called the Blood Bank Center. And it was a very large donor thing, like similar to the Red Cross. We collected about 1,000 units of blood a day, and we served about 40 hospitals.
What did you learn in school when you were?
Well, I learned the techniques and management of blood banks and blood services, and some of it was physiology, some was chemistry, immunology. That was the first 6 months of the school was learning the science, and then the second 6 months was learning the management. And we would travel around the country to go to various places. We go to hospitals and see how they set up their laboratories, and we would go to where the Army would buy their reagents for blood banks and see how the reagents are made. I got to know the people at the airport by their first names.
You spent a lot of time in the airport.
We were in and out of the airport about I think every 3 or 4 days we were on an airplane, not going somewhere.
So were you gone more than you were home?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
And was it really interesting work? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was absolutely the best thing I ever did. It got me, I met people that I never thought I would meet. It actually helped my career when I came to Barnes. Yeah, it was wonderful.
What are some of the people you met that?
I met people like Philip Levine, Dr. Philip Levine, who was the guy who discovered RH. I met the people who I read about in the books about the history of blood banking. People from Europe who had come, they were visiting in the States, and we were able to meet with them, talk to them.
What an
learned
exciting
a lot of
time of
techniques.
life.
Went to places like Costa Mesa in California, and if you want to know what happens to some of the Clydesdale horses, they go there and they become antibody producers. It's a nice life. They graze and they, every once in a while they donate some blood.
That's okay. Well, first when you said they do that, I thought, oh, what does that mean for that
It's
animal?
great,
But it was
because they're so huge, you could take several gallons of blood out of them at a time. That they don't flinch.
that's why they chose the Clydesdales.
Yeah.
Wow. So what were some of the highlights of having that kind of work? I mean, you're gone.
Well,
gone a
it
lot.
took me. It's something that if you're studying this kind of stuff in the civilian world, you would never encounter these things that I did. I had experiences that a civilian doing a similar job would never know. And so I was able to I was on national committees and whatever, because I really knew more than the average technologist, if you will. And because the Army, because of my position, I was in charge. I never was in a position of not being in charge. And so you learn how to manage people. And that's all I've done all my life, is manage people.
And it's a skill. It's a real skill to learn to manage people, I think.
And stay healthy.
Tell us something about that. That can you elaborate on?
I mean, it's not, there's about 5% of the people are euphoric and because they don't know where they are. And about 5% just hate your guts. And you got to be able to live with that. You got to, be able to realize there are people who don't agree with you in this world. Now, and I've met people, particularly when I got out of the service and came to Barnes, I saw people who just couldn't take it. The managers who they want everybody to like them. It's just not the way it is.
Yeah. You have to do.
Especially when you have a very large staff. At Barnes Hospital, I had a staff of over 400. And so, there's a great number of people in there who probably didn't like me at all. Not that I care about that particularly,
But it's a little stressful, isn't it?
sometimes, yeah, it's a stressful job. It's always a stressful job because your job is to provide information to physicians who are treating patients. And many of the times it's life and death.
Wow. Can you give us a story about what?
Well, I mean, especially in blood banking, you're there to provide that a matched unit of blood, in many cases, many units of blood. In a place like Barnes Hospital or Walter Reed, where you have a large emergency room, you get people that are pretty mangled up and need lots of blood.
Wow.
And so it's got to be there for them.
Yeah. So there's a sense of urgency.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That would.
Day and night. It was around the clock. From the time I went to Fort Belvoir until I retired from Barnes Hospital, I never had a day where I didn't carry a pager.
Gosh. Okay, so then when you went to your training and your family followed you,
Right.
and you did that for how long?
Training was a year
A year.
at Fort Knox, and then we stayed there for another few years where I was at the blood center. When I left the blood center, they gave me a gift. They sent me to Honolulu, Hawaii, the Triple Army Medical Center.
Oh my gosh.
I was there for 4 years, and that was a fantastic assignment, obviously. And you can't,
The location alone.
there's nothing wrong with being in Hawaii. That's paradise on earth.
No. And so your family liked it?
Oh, absolutely. We traveled around the islands. My job was the same. I went from the blood center where I was dealing only with the donor side of blood banking. Now I had both the donor side and the transfusion side, the hospital side of blood banking.
Had you done that before, the transfusion side?
Not only in training.
Okay.
So this was a good experience that I got there. And it's a big hospital. The Triple Army Medical Center is a big regional hospital. Takes care of patients, not Army, Navy, and Air Force, not only in Hawaii, but throughout the Pacific, all the Mariana Islands.
That's a large population.
So we took care of a lot of people, and they would bring in people from the islands, who were most of them cancer patients, and we would take care of them.
You saw some stuff, didn't you?
Yeah.
You really did.
And I was in the right place at the right time. I was able to bring in a pheresis unit apheresis is where we take a certain part of the blood and you donate a certain part of the blood. So in this case, we were collecting white cells from patients, and they would particularly bring in people from some of these islands who had no idea, didn't speak the language. Samoans, these are very huge people, 300-400-pound people. And
Just naturally big.
and have to stand there and not be able to really communicate with them and take this big needle and I'm going to stick this needle in you.
How did you get these people to come? Were they sick?
They came with their families.
Because
and they were donors. They came to donate to their family members who had been brought into the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So it was, and I was able to convince the government that we needed a mobile van for donors. And so we got the first Army mobile van for collecting blood.
Did you get out there on that van and?
Actually, the van showed up when I left.
But you got it.
But I
made it happen.
I made it happen, and they actually put my name on it.
They did.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I saw a picture of it once.
A little bit of immortality there.
And I was able to work with the civilian community. I was on the board of directors of the Blood Bank of Hawaii. And so it was very interesting to be able to combine the two of us, our system, which was much larger than theirs, but we were able to share information and share blood and what have you.
That's fascinating. So you were there for?
I was there 4 years.
4 years. And then
we went back to Fort Knox to command the Blood Center, which I was able to get named after my mentor, Colonel Frank Camp. So it became the Frank R. Camp Memorial Blood Center. And I was there till I retired for about 4.5 years, I guess.
So how did you end up in St. Louis?
Well, I was at a meeting of the American Association of Blood Banks, and I told some of my friends that I was interested in retiring from the service. And they introduced me to a couple people, and one of them happened to be a manager here at Barnes Hospital. I had no idea what Barnes Hospital was, but she talked to me for a while, and I gave her a copy of my resume. And then I learned later that there was a doctor that worked here at Barnes who I thought was one of the experts in a certain disease. And I said, I'd like to work with him. And he happened to be the medical director of the Blood Center at Barnes. So I said, so time went by and I didn't hear anything. I thought, well, I'm not going to do anything. By that time, I had gotten an offer for a job in New York City at the New York Blood Center. The same week I got that offer, I got an offer from Barnes to come to Barnes. And when I compared the two jobs, Barnes was the winner.
Hands down, it was a better opportunity.
Yeah, I never thought we'd stay here as long as I have, but.
So you moved here in what year?
85.
85. And how old were your kids then?
Well, at that time I'd had 3 kids now. So I don't
So you had a daughter, then you had a son.
And then 10 years later, after my son was born, I had another daughter.
Okay. And her name is?
Her name's Jessica.
Jessica. So you came to St. Louis with 3 kids?
Yeah.
And how old were your older 2 at the time?
My oldest one was, she was a late teenager. She was a senior in high school.
Ooh, that was hard for her, wasn't it? I would think. Reading friends. So she was a senior, and her son?
Son was, I think he was a freshman. And then the little one was only 4 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old.
So you thought you were coming here, your family thought you were coming here for?
Well, I never thought that, we moved around so much. I figured, we'll be here for a few years and then we'll move on someplace else. Well, Barnes kept sweetening the pot and I kept staying.
How old were you at the time when you moved here?
I was 42, 43.
Oh, you had your whole career ahead of you.
Yeah.
And so it just...
And so we just happened to stay. I was at Barnes for 27 years.
Oh my gosh. Big place, isn't it?
It is. And it's about bigger now than it was when I started.
When did you retire?
I retired in 2012.
2012. How did your family adjust to them moving to the Midwest?
Reasonably well. The kids, my oldest daughter we picked her up at the airport in Louisville, Kentucky. She was a exchange student, and she had just come back from Germany, and we got into the car and drove to St. Louis.
Was she as adaptable as your wife?
The kids had to be adaptable. So, so she, we lived, at that time we lived in Baldwin, and they went to Parkway South, and that was a good school. She did very well in her senior year, and my son did well there, and my daughter the other daughter did as well too.
So what are your kids doing now?
My oldest daughter, unfortunately, is deceased. She had MS, and she died in 2012.
The year you retired?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
My son is he's into computers and what have you. He lives in with his family in Jefferson City. Jefferson City. I guess he works mostly out of the house, but he works with large mainframe computers. And my other daughter is an environmental lobbyist. She lives in Kensington, Maryland, and she spends a lot of time in the Hill talking to congressmen.
How did she get into something like
That's what she wanted to do. That's so she went to George Washington University, and she got a degree in environmental studies and got a master's degree from the Vermont Law School in environmental law. So she's
quite successful?
She works for the Pew Foundation now.
Pew Foundation. And so do you see her very often, or you?
2-3 times a year. They usually drive here, and I'll go there a couple of times a year.
And how is your wife like being in St. Louis?
But she liked it. I mean, unfortunately she's also deceased.
Oh.
Actually, 2012 was a bad year. She died in 2012 as well.
Wow.
But
and you have a smile on your face most of the time while we're talking. It's remarkable.
You gotta keep moving.
Yeah,
you gotta keep going.
Yeah, you do. So can you talk about anything that at work that, retirement from an exciting job like that?
Yeah,
That's
it actually, I was ready for retirement. It was the right thing to do. I had 10, 12, 14-hour days were getting me, and after my wife died, I figured there's no point in this thing. I want to do something different. So I'm doing something different now.
What are you doing?
I do a little bit of volunteer work.
Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Actually, well, mostly with my synagogue. I've been on the board of directors there for 25 years. And I've probably held every office. So today I am now the financial vice president, which does take some time. So it's the kind of job that a retiree does.
Okay. You enjoy it?
Yeah.
Do you miss the science world at all?
Oh, I'm still in that. I still read and I still write, and I'm a peer reviewer for Clinical Laboratory Science magazine.
Sounds like you're pretty busy.
I keep busy.
You keep busy. You're one of those stories that I've heard, and I don't know you, that where the military really changed your life and gave you opportunities.
Oh, it definitely did. When the first time, which was when I was at Fort Huachuca, and we both looked at each other and said, what am I going to do when I get out? I'm going to get out in 3 or 4 months. What do I do? I didn't have a job. I didn't have a profession. I didn't have anything. And we both looked at each other and said, I don't know what we're going to do. And then this school came along, and now I knew what I was going to do.
Wow. Is there anything else you want to talk about that you would like to have on this recording? Any experiences, anything that you learned in your life along the way?
Well, I've learned that life is a lot of hard work. You got to make up your mind. You want to do something, you got to do it, and you want to do it right. I think that my career, both in the Army, particularly at Barnes, where I was able to see a lot of young people coming in, there was definitely a generation gap. And the way kids are trained today, even my own kids, the way they're trained, it's very different. And I'm not sure it's better. I think that we were trained to have some loyalties toward something or other, country, job, whatever. Kids are not trained that way anymore. And I think that's a big loss.
So is it their attitude, or you mean those values are not in?
Well, those values are not there. It's more interested in themselves than in others. I found that when we were hiring new grads at Barnes, and these kids come out of school, and come summertime, and they say, well, when do I get a vacation? You only get 2 weeks when you first start, and they look 2 weeks. I can't live like that. They quit. They just have no interest. They're going to bum around Europe for 3 months. Then they'll come back to a job. I said, I don't know where you're going to get a job. It's not going to be here.
Yeah, yeah, that is very, very different from what you experienced. It really is. So that's an important message, I think.
Yeah, and
That you,
my granddaughter lives with me, and she just graduated from college a year ago, and she's actually just gotten her first full-time job.
she has.
And,
What is she going to do?
she's going to be working for AmeriCorps, actually down at the Arch, and I've tried to instill in her the fact that you got to get up in the morning, you got to go to work, you have to do what you're told. It's the world's.
She go to college here? Is that what?
She went to Ohio Wesleyan University.
And then she came here to.
She's been living with me since for about the last 10 years. So when she was in school, obviously she lived in Ohio, but her home is my home.
Is it? Was she here before she went to college, also, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other grandchildren?
I have 5 others.
5 others.
And they range from, well, she's 23, and the youngest one is 3 months.
And where do these other 4 grandchildren live?
2 are in Jeff City. Another one is here in St. Louis, and he's, let's see, he's about, he's 21. And the 2 little ones are in Washington.
Washington. And what is your grandson, who's 21, what's he doing right now?
He's going to school. He's in college. He's at UMSL.
So you're blessed with some family, and
Yeah.
you really are. Anything else you want to add? Any memorable experiences? Or I think what you were talking about in terms of the difference in the generations about work and school is...
Not really. I think that I'm old enough. I'm older than the baby boomers.
By 5 years, maybe.
Right. So we were trained differently. We were brought up differently. The World War II mindset was quite different. That is, my father worked every day. He left the house at 7 o'clock in the morning. He came home at 6 o'clock at night. Just like clockwork. He never understood me because mine never was so regimented. Because in a hospital environment, you could be there all day and night or not.
Right.
So, but I learned from that. I learned that, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, it's a good lesson. It's a very good lesson. Do either of you want to ask any questions before we?
Yeah, the hat. You want to show the hat?
Yeah, this is, I just brought this just to keep those are the unit crests from the units that I was in.
Oh my God.
And so the various units.
Those are beautiful.
And on this side is the miniature ribbons, the miniatures of my ribbons.
Oh
or whatever.
Gosh, that's a lot. And you told me you had quite a lot of awards. You want to say them for the camera right now? That
I have
point them out and tell
I
us
have
who they are?
the Meritorious Service Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Army Commendation Medal with 1 oak leaf cluster, the Army Achievement Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, the Overseas Ribbon and the Army Ribbon, and the Vietnam Service Medal.
Are you a member of VFW?
No, I'm a member of the Jewish War Veterans. And I'm also a member of the Military Officers Association of the United States and the Association of Military Surgeons of the United States.
And so your members, do you have meetings that you attend and
Yeah.
you stay active in that way? There are a lot of people to talk to about that period of time then.
Actually, less. You know, most of the guys that go to the JWV meetings are World War II vets, and they're getting on in years.
Yeah, that's so true. So true.
You know, that's where the Jewish war veterans actually began in the Civil War, and but the biggest influx of people was obviously from World War II. But since World War II, there's not a lot of joiners.
No?
Why do you think that is?
Again, it's people that just they're in for themselves. They just don't join and get together with others. And I don't know. I mean, I have the same problem at the work I do at my synagogue. Used to be 25 years ago, you would have volunteers all over the place. You don't have any volunteers anymore. People are working. And they,
Yeah, people
you know, it's just two members of the household are fully employed. You don't have a sisterhood anymore who did all the volunteer work.
I think that's very true. I think a lot of places are feeling that they don't have that extra help. Anything else you want to add? This has been very interesting, and we really, really appreciate your taking the time.
I appreciate it. I'm certainly no hero, but
You've had a very interesting life, a very, very interesting life. And
it has been interesting. It was a good life. The Army was the right thing for me.
boy, was it just such a positive experience. Like you say frequently, I was in the right time,
Yes.
right time, right place,
Yep.
and it worked for you. Well, again, thank you very, very much for coming in and talking to
You're
us.
very
Your
welcome.
story is really interesting, and I'm sure your kids will enjoy being able to have this and hear what you have to say. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
See you.
Thank you.